Welcome to the Advanced Course Remastered, Lesson 2, Fractal Information. Alright, in this lesson, we're not slowing down at all. We are going to be jumping right into examples. We're taking all the information that we learned in the beginner's course, breaking it down fractally, and now adding another layer on top of it. Valleys and peaks. Well, we dissect lower and lower and lower, and also higher time frames in these examples. So we're going to be looking at, once again, the S&P 500. I love sticking with one chart and mastering it, breaking it down and tearing it apart and finding the deepest and darkest secrets of it. So for that reason, we're sticking with the S&P 500 for this example. We're going to start breaking down all these different time frames, mark out valleys and peaks, and see where some of these levels could possibly be. We're going to start with the deepest time frame that we can, the 12-month time period. Now, I don't typically recommend using this big of a time frame, but I think for this example, it's worth marking out this level. We can now move down to the monthly time frame and mark the next valley on our chart. We can see that this valley was actually already tested in August of 2015. So we want to find the next untested level. We can see the next untested level in September of 2016. While that did get tested in the moment, at least it gives us the information to see, hey, this was the level that got hit. If we were to mark the next valley on the chart on the monthly time frame, we could move up to January of 2020 and we can see that the creation of this valley starts here and we can mark that as the next untested valley. Let's now move down into the weekly timeframes to see if there's other components that we've missed. We can even take this one step further and mark the next valley in September 2020 as the final kind of valley. So we should have 1, 2, 3, 4 valleys marked on our chart, 1, 2 untested, 1 tested just for informational purposes, and a third one that's very deep on the 12-month time frame. Let's now move down into the weekly time frame to see if there's anything else that's interesting. Well, I don't see too much in terms of interesting valleys that haven't been tested. There is one that's very close to the level that we just marked, but for this reason, I think that you just have kind of the same entry. You're within about $40 of each other, and if you test one, you're likely going to test them both. One may be a little bit of a greedier spot that might give you better entry, but it may not get hit. So I think there's a decision to be made, but these should be treated as the same level as they're represented under the same valley from the higher time frame. Let's now move down into the daily time frame and see if there's any other valleys that we can find. You have one here on October 26th that is inside of those same 2 valleys. So we're kind of getting into this compounding method here where you have a larger time frame with a smaller time frame with an even smaller time frame. So you're starting to get into different spots that you could look at interesting buys across this chart. You have a larger valley with maybe multiple buying opportunities inside of it because it has different spots of time frame valleys that are created. There's another valley on the daily that's kind of marked out in the past, but the problem with that one is it's already tested. It's out on June 9th of 2020, and it had already been tested. So there was a valley that was created on that lower time frame, but in the future, when that moment happened, it created a test and it moved off it perfectly. So I think we've created a few really interesting moments on this chart so far. 3 levels of support that could potentially support this larger move. And really one of these 3 levels of support is going to be tested in the future, but it's kind of up to you in the moment to decide which one. I kind of have the rule of thumb that I like to go for greedier and greedier and greedier targets. So when I'm charting these things and I'm looking at, hey, there's 4 or 5 different buying opportunities, I will gravitate more towards the best price possible. And if I miss the trade, just like my rule in the beginner's course, I simply just move on. I constantly move my targets down, take greedier entries. And if I miss it because I got too greedy, then oh well, no big deal. I just move on to the next trade. But I do think these are 3 interesting levels with spots that could potentially bounce the target. We won't be able to tell which one is going to be the target that actually bounces it until we get closer to the move. But at least we have them marked out on our chart as spots of interest. So this is great for a chart that's constantly moving up. We've taken all the valleys in the charts and we've marked them as levels of support. But what about peaks? How do peaks fit into this equation? Well, the great thing about this is that you can mark the swing low of a move as your level of support, and you can see in the future where it will create a peak. So if this creates a peak, then you know it's going to be future resistance. Now we're not there at that moment yet. But if you were to mark the swing low of a candle and you were to say, hey, this is the bottom of the move, if it goes lower than that point, you have successfully created a peak, which will be resistance in the future. So this can kind of give you a barometer as to where something might reverse in the markets and where something might take a run in the other direction. This is an amazing way to see where future resistance can be and the moments that are defining the charts as moving up for X amount of time or starting to break down and reverse into the other direction. the procreation of peaks and valleys prior to them happening. Well, if you have those levels marked out on your chart, you can see when those moments happen in the moment. So let's look at another spot in this chart where what we had just explained actually happened in real time. You have the bottom of a move, which could potentially create a peak in the future. The bottom of a peak being resistance for that exact move. Well, you can see on my screen that you lost a trend, you bounced off the bottom of the move, which was support in the moment, and also the creation of the peak. When you lose that peak, you actually move down. The interesting part about this is you actually moved down to the next valley that was untested on a large time frame. So you broke your trend, you created a peak, which was able to be seen from the top of the chart. You went down to test an untested valley, and then you went back up to that peak, the bottom side of it, to see the resistance of it. You broke over that resistance and then created a move up in the future. So it's kind of all coming together in this magical way where you have peaks and valleys that you can create before actually seeing them happen on the chart, and the moments that actually trigger those peaks and valleys to go to the next peak and valley. A lost level or a lost peak or valley moves down to the next untested peak or valley. Now, this isn't a hard set rule where this is what happens every single time, but this is one advanced way that we can look at charts and part of our toolkit that we can add to create interesting spots in the future. So I think we got a little too far ahead of ourselves in this video and created quite a complex scenario that I hope I didn't lose people in. Moving from the beginner's course where we just were drawing a few trends and levels to having advanced peaks and valleys in our charts to now seeing them before they're happening to being able to explain all of these things at once. We're getting pretty deep into this thing and we're only at the advanced course. This is the second of dozens of courses that I have. But for now, I think this is a good spot to stop the video and give you guys some time to kind of figure these things out on your own and take a look at some charts, try these peaks and valleys and see what you can make out of them. I've given you quite a few advanced tools already in just these quick 2 lessons that we've done in the advanced course. But now it's time for your brain to kind of work its magic and see where you can find these spots. In the next lesson, we're going to be talking about trends in a more deeper light, uptrends, downtrends, and kind of how they affect the ongoing moves of charts. And when one of these larger uptrends or downtrends break, exactly where it goes and what it does. I'll see you there on the next video.